Hi guys, this is Ibrahim from the SIM University, and today we're going to talk about something that's going on in the news quite a lot. And this is something that is something that has been sort of portrayed as a very one-dimensional thing. Want to talk about something that is happening or has happened, which is a very unfortunate incident where a police officer was shot dead by a 25-year-old guy whose name is Luis de Souza and who fatally shot Sergeant Matt Ratana. Unfortunately, the police officer died in that case. Now, his defense was that he had autistic meltdown. Uh, and what exactly is an autistic meltdown? Well, one of the things is that is said a lot about these things is there's not enough education about autism, about autistic meltdowns, about what the actual thing is, and how does it affect people who are living with it. The poor guy had a mental health disorder by the looks of it. Autistic meltdowns are basically sensory overload. So somebody has too much going on and they can't really cope with all the information coming into their senses, and their brain basically stops being able to cope with everything that's going on, and they have effectively a meltdown. It's not well understood. I think it's often said that prison are an alternative mental health institution, and this shows that mental health problems are not very well understood in society, and there's very little pity or there's very little sympathy for people who are effectively victims of things that they were born with that they have no idea. If you look at physical disabilities, they're very well known, registered, treated. People are treated with respect, especially in the UK and in all developed countries who have physical health disability problems. But for people who have mental health problems, they never get that level of support, and in the case of this person, he's effectively a victim who's being double victimized. Now, it's hard to say what exactly happened. The case is done, it's closed, but if you look at what's happened, you've got a very tiny room, and you've got three people speaking to this guy, probably barking orders at him. And you've got a police officer kind of trying to impose himself. If you look at his body language, he's kind of standing straight with his hands to his hips. He's saying, "I'm in charge." And this guy who was diagnosed with autism when he was 13 years old probably has three people speaking to him at the same time or in similar times, you know, barking orders at him. Obviously, he's in a lot of distress, because he was caught, arrested, put in a police van, taken into this very small holding room, which really nobody should be put into. I don't think, into a very small cell almost. And he had an autistic meltdown. Now, it's very difficult to say what exactly happened, but I think one of the things should be that he should be treated with probably a bit more respect and a little bit more sympathy than is given to him. It's very unfortunate that it happened. If he had autism, that condition should have been tackled, a long time ago, and he should have been given the kind of support that he probably deserved from a much earlier age, and that was never given to him. That does not in any way justify his actions, or the fact that he did, but what probably should have happened, if you look at just the process and where the process has gone wrong, he should have told the police officers he's autistic. So when he was being arrested, so if you just go and look at the video, um, uh, if you look at the video here, um, right from the beginning, let's look at if you look at the video where he's actually being arrested. So just have to wait for this, unfortunate. Uh, so so if you go back to the video, right at this point when he's being arrested, and at this point already, I think he was arrested for having say marijuana or whatever and handmade bullets. Not sure why he was arrested. Which one of those two is the reason he was arrested? I don't think it's very clear on the video why he was arrested, but I think it looks like it's because of this homemade bullet. At this point, he should have told the police officers that he has autism, or the police officers should have asked him, does he have any known medical problems? Right at this point, now, if he refuses to um, give up that information to the police officer and say, "Well, I'm not autistic," or he doesn't disclose that he's got a mental health problem, then that's his fault. But he should have at this point told the police officers that he's got some mental health problems, and they probably should have first taken him to a hospital, spoken to a doctor, checked his mental health, make sure he's okay, briefed the police officers of how to deal with a guy who's autistic, and then taken him to custody or whatever way they should have treated him. But at this point, already you can see he's getting distressed. Now, when you come to the custody, this is something that is going to be a kind of a rife situation for autistic meltdown. You've got three police officers standing in front of him, all trying to impose themselves through their body language on him. He's being cuffed behind his hands. And you can tell already that this man would be in distress. I think anybody would be in distress, not just an autistic person. If you got three people rounding a guy up, putting him in a vulnerable position, he would probably feel distressed anyways, and anybody would have probably started shouting and screaming. But in this case, it's quite, I guess, important to realize that somebody who has autism are more likely to probably have an autistic meltdown. It's not really well understood what the situation is. I don't think doctors are very well briefed, and maybe this is a case where doctors should be allowed, police officers should be allowed to see a person's mental health history when they arrest him to make sure they're not putting somebody in distress. The second thing is, obviously, I think the other thing is that I'm not really sure how he was handcuffed behind his back. It's almost impossible for somebody who's handcuffed behind their backs to somehow be able to pull a gun and shoot if his hands are cuffed behind his back. It's I mean, how on earth did he do it? He's it's very, very difficult to imagine how he's actually done it. Unless he's taken a gun in one hand, moved his left hand, which is cupped all the way to his right side, and then pulled this one out, and apparently he had hypermobile joints. But I don't think in any way it his responsibilities is not there. He's responsible for it. His probably responsibilities diminished because of the things and the precursors that have come up before the incident happened. And I think the more important thing is that mental health problems are not well understood. The other thing here is probably to realize that uh, this people who use marijuana are more likely to develop temporary psychosis, as well as have long-lasting mental health disorders, including schizophrenia, type of mental health illness where people might see or hear things that are not really there. Now, this is quite interesting because I think there's a lot of stuff, especially in America, legalizing. Uh, there's a lot of stuff where it's now getting legalized and it's okay, and people are trying to okay the use of recreational marijuana, but really it should not be okay. And this is a warning case for the use of marijuana in society as well, because part of his psychosis or schizophrenia or mental autistic disorder, or the fact that he was probably feeling more mental health distress than other people, is probably also related to the fact that he was using marijuana on a regular basis. So this is also, I think, you put all of that factors, his drug use, or I'm guessing he was using drugs or had used in the past because obviously he was um, carrying marijuana, as well as the fact that the police have probably, at least from what you can see, they're trying to impose themselves on him. And UK police aren't exactly the greatest organization in the world, and anybody who's dealt with them could probably vouch for that, as well as his autistic meltdown and his pre-existing. So you've got a pre-existing mental health condition, then you've got drug use, which probably exacerbates or amplifies it, and then you've got police trying to impose himself on him, especially this police officer Matt Ratana, who's kind of like standing in a very imposing way, saying, "I'm in charge," and in a very small boxed room which almost looks like a Skinner box. Um, Skinner box almost looks like a, it almost looks like a Skinner box where they put a rat inside. I mean, this is not the kind of place where you put somebody. They could have easily put him in a room and cuffed him. But this kind of situation is rife. It's creating the preconditions for an accident. That does not in any way diminish his responsibility. But if you have a road where there are a lot of accidents, you should blame the driver, but you should also blame the road. And what often happens in the UK legal system is that everybody blames the driver, but never the road. And that's the kind of problem. Policing has a lot of faults in the UK. It's a very flawed system. You see the kind of police officers who are coming out of the UK system who are, we don't even need to mention the kind of police officers that are coming, and it's an endemic problem. Even the recent government report on policing shows how bad it is. Uh, there's been I think, a sue. There's been a recent report from a woman called Sue Gray into policing, which was released recently, which is a very scathing report on UK policing, how bad policing is, as well as the endemic problems within policing of things like misogyny and hundreds of other problems. And I think this is also a sort of high time to look at policing in the UK, which has always been very flawed since the beginning, but I think it's getting probably worse than it ever was back in the day. So there we go. There was also a David Lammy report um, done a long time ago into policing, which looked at the violence against ethnic minorities, and Institute of Race Relations has a page on this, on deaths in custody, which goes into 50% of all deaths, over 50% of all deaths in custody are people of black, 30% are Asian. So it just shows you how bad policing really is. It's obviously racist. There's obviously a lot of misogyny, and it's not exactly the best place. And it's a very unfortunate thing, but medical neglect, self-harm, mental health factors. I mean, it's restrained use of force. It's not exactly the best thing in the world. And most of them get covered up. Never has a police officer um, been properly charged. If you look at the ethnicity of those who died following police contact, 57% black, 22% Asian, which just shows you how bad policing really is in the UK. And a lot of these problems are unfortunately London-based. 61% of people who died are, based in London. In Scotland, is just 1%. So policing in the UK is just really, really bad. And what needs to happen, I think, more than anything, is that policing needs to be reviewed. The way police deal with mental health disorders needs to be reviewed. And a lot of these problems would probably not happen if the police know how to tactfully deal with people as well as understand their medical conditions before they end up doing something. So there we go. That's a little bit of review. It's a very hot sort of topical issue. It's a very sensitive issue. Obviously, some people are going to be very pro the fact that somebody with mental health disorder should have been treated better. Some people will say, no, it's just his fault, and it's people. The opinions are going to be polarized, but the reality is his mental health condition should have been known before he was put into custody. And in the way there are three people standing around him, should probably not. Is a recipe for disaster. Um, yeah, it's kind of it's that's a bit of a lot of it on both sides. I mean, this is just a 25-year-old guy whose life has been completely destroyed now. He shot himself. He's now in a wheelchair, which basically means his life is destroyed, as well as the life of the police officer who was killed. His life, obviously, he's not alive anymore. And this guy is going to probably live the rest of his life in a vegetative state because obviously he's shot himself through his head, which means he's permanently paralyzed. It's a very, very unfortunate situation, and it shows obviously there's an incident that's happened, and there's people who are the kind of people who are involved. There's obviously responsibility, but at the same time, it looks at how bad policing is in the UK. It's an absolutely shockingly bad government organization. It should actually, if I was in a position of authority like an MP, I would probably fire entire police force and rehire everyone, because the entire system is corrupt. It's bad. It's absolutely horrible. So there we go. That's it for this video, and I will speak to you in the next video. Thanks.